want to talk about the corporate perspective on biodiversity. So I want to bring, after this really amazing visionary talk of Lavinia, a pragmatic sort of reality check of how companies deal with biodiversity at this point. And I want to talk about why biodiversity matters, just very briefly. I want to talk about the challenges that companies have, and I want to talk about how these challenges are being addressed right now. And if you click one slide further, please, I will start with the why. Why is biodiversity important? Biodiversity, we just heard it, I mean, is the very essence of everything we need to survive on this planet. That's just, it's a strong statement, but that's how it is. We are living well beyond the planetary boundaries in many respects. And if you look at this graph that's here in the middle of that slide from Johan Ropström, it's 15 years old. And if you look at the mildly gray inner circle, that's our planetary boundaries. And there are quite a few topics where we already cross these planetary boundaries. And most of us have now understood climate change is a thing. It's real, it's happening, and we need to act on it. Has also gotten to pretty much all companies now, or most of them at least, that there's a need to act on climate change. That's great. But this hasn't happened yet for biodiversity, despite the fact that biodiversity loss is a very essential issue. And just one more fact here, there are different ways to look, or different scientific, I'd say, results that look into the loss of biodiversity at the moment. But the loss that we're facing right now is so dramatic. It's estimated of being up to 1,000 times higher than the normal extinction rate of species would be in nature. And the fact that this is man-made, human-made, that this is happening is undisputable. So it's happening, and we have a big impact on it. And if you click one slide further, I want to talk about the corporate perspective on biodiversity. So for the corporate world, and I'm really talking about any corporation, not only textile and fashion industry, we can really be very broad about it, talk about all industries in some. So for the corporate world, biodiversity really is mostly, for a few exceptions, a very new topic. They have not addressed that in the past, despite the knowledge of what is out there and the reasons that to act that would have been there in the past, but it's a new topic now for companies. And there are a couple of reasons for this, why this has never played a significant role in corporate sustainability. And the main reason for me, or one of the main reasons for me, is that there was sort of like a lack of external pressure. So neither regulators nor significant NGOs have addressed it in such a way, or public pressure was not there. Companies really had some external pressure to act. And this is something where we can observe now at least a small change. We see some regulatory requirements coming for companies, most prominently the EU taxonomy that is relevant for more than 10,000 companies in the EU. As of next year, they will have to report on how they address biodiversity. It is not specified yet what exactly the requirements will be, but it is already enough so that companies start looking into the topic and talk to us, for example, and to other experts. How can they deal with this that they haven't dealt with before? We also see some change in regards to investor relations, for example. You see the big investor companies like BlackRock, for example, as a prominent one, or the Norwegian oil fund, who have started to look to require action on climate change, but now also on biodiversity. And in relation to this, there are reporting frameworks. For example, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index that requires, or where you can score. Basically, if you want to be on that index as a company, if you want to score, you can score on biodiversity as well. And to be honest, that's what if we observe the companies that we work with at the moment. This seems to be one of the main motivators right now, as we speak right now. And then, of course, there's the point of supply chain security. If you depend on agricultural products, it's very obvious. So if you need cotton crops to grow, to produce clothing, that's a natural product. For food, it's the same. It's very obvious, and people understand, of course, the role that pollinators play in that context. But also, there are things like diversity of different species to create resilience, to have security of supply. So I've been talking to a coffee manufacturer not long ago who was experimenting with ancient coffee types of plants, who are just more resilient to deal with climate change, for example. So these are the external drivers that now make companies look into biodiversity. And if you click one slide further, there is another reason why companies haven't really dealt with the loss of biodiversity in the past. And that is that biodiversity is incredibly complex. It's a very, very complex topic. You have so many interdependencies. You have millions of species. You have ecosystems and habitats, and they all interact with each other. It's a very complex structure, and it's very difficult to break that complexity down into something that is actionable. And in the past, really the only chance you had to deal with that was to hire experts who could come to your location, would stay there a couple of weeks, write a big report, and then maybe move to the next location. That's fine, but that doesn't really work if you're a big fashion brand and you have hundreds or thousands of suppliers. You can't really address biodiversity in your supply chain if you need to have experts on site. So that's something that needed change and is changing right now. We are part of that change, so we have developed software to address that. There are other solutions out there as well, so that's something that was an issue in the past. What we also see right now is that there's not really one standard to understand biodiversity impact. There are a couple of organizations at this point working on defining these standards. A lot of them like really big global organizations, and some of them are focused on specific industries, finance industry, for example, or agricultural products. I just had a conversation the other day with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They have their own initiative. There are science-based targets for nature, which we are also part of, who developed approaches towards corporate biodiversity impact. You have the Align project of the European Union. You have so many initiatives now that are sort of like developing some common understanding and some common language, and then also some common approaches on how to understand impact on biodiversity. But what is missing at the moment is a stronger emphasis on impact reduction, on actions that need to be taken to reduce impact. So this is, from our perspective, it's very super critical and super crucial that understanding impact is important, of course, but it's almost it's a secondary issue to however you come to an understanding of what impact you have. It's much more important to take actions, and with this taking actions, I can only say that it needs a lot of pragmatism when it comes to actions regarding biodiversity. So there's, of course, always the attempt to be as good as possible and to be as perfect as possible, and restoring nature to its ideally, I mean, that's the ideal case, to its initial state. But this is so complicated and so complex, and small steps towards that, to even start with, any step you take now is a big step towards that goal. there needs to be a stronger emphasis on this. And also, what you should not forget is any action you take now will take years, if not decades, to show any impact. So, from my perspective, from our perspective, action biodiversity. Addressing biodiversity impact must be action-driven. And it brings me to my last slide and my last 30 seconds as well, as the time is ticking. Biodiversity impact is manageable. This is now something for the first time companies are in a position where they can address that based on software solutions that are out there. It's important to have this complex topic broken down for non-experts so that non-experts, because most companies don't have experts, can deal with this topic. It must be easily implementable into what already exists at companies, and it must be absolutely action-driven. Understanding impact only is not enough. Thank you very much.